How many Voltrons do you remember? If you said 3, you're a hardcore Voltron fan, and I salute you. If you said 2, you're still clearly a kid of the 80s, and you'd still be correct, as far as the animated series is concerned. 3 Voltrons landed in toy stores in 1984, each designated by Roman numerals. Voltron 3 is the famous Voltron, Lion Force, originally Beast King Go Lion. Voltron 2 is the lost Voltron known as Gladiator Force, derived from Lightspeed Electroid Albegus. The reason this Voltron never appeared on TV is indirectly related to the lukewarm reception given to Voltron 1, the underdog vehicle force based on Armored Fleet Die Rugger 15.
We gotta get back to the past, to the 20th century. Digging through the bubble wrap into your memories. Back was the collector, he's protecting what we find. Relentless heavy metal guns keep us safe through time. Retro blasting.
This is not a toy.
Just the corners of your mind. Retro blasting. The stuff you love since you were 9. We're blasting into the past to see what thrill still lasts. Retro blasting.
As we discussed in one of RetroBlasting's earliest videos, The Violence of Voltron, World Events Productions acquired Beast King Go Lion by accident, presumably expecting to receive a show called Daltanius. But due to language barriers and both shows having robots with lion themes, Go Lion showed up instead. The producers loved the show so much they refocused on that series, despite that Voltron being number 3 in the marketing. The Lions were a huge success, so it was really jarring when they transitioned to Vehicle Voltron with no warning. I grew up in Nashville, and there Vehicle Voltron played on weekends. I think it was on Sundays, which meant I rarely ever saw Vehicle Voltron. So the whole Voltron experience for me was effectively over. The few episodes I did catch struck me as less than exciting. Sometimes Vehicle Voltron reminds me of that chunky kid in school that wanted to be a ninja. The way they animated him makes him look less like a warrior and more like he's in a jazzercise class.
Woo! 4, 5, 6, and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 5.
I liked the design of the robot for the most part. I liked the rewrite of the combining sequence to say
Form, arms, and torso.
rather than the
Form, arms, and body.
of the Lion show. I liked the sword too, but the content was far removed in tone from the Lion Voltron, and that tonal shift was likely the reason for Vehicle Voltron's lack of popularity. And that lack of popularity was certainly the reason Voltron 2 was never adapted into a third Voltron series. But how different could Vehicle Voltron really be? Both are science fiction action shows about giant combining robots protecting humanity from alien threats, right? Yes. And at the same time, no. Vehicle Voltron follows a crew of space explorers from Earth as they search the galaxy for habitable worlds. Very early into their expedition, they encounter the Drool Empire, a hostile alien society that wants the Galaxy Garrison out of their backyard. Throughout the rest of the series, it is clear and even spoken by the main characters that Galaxy Garrison is undeniably in Drool territory.
We signed a treaty with the Drools not to stay on this planet more than 3 days, and our time is up.
We must respect the treaty and leave this planet at once.
I cannot do that. The military council is considering building a permanent base on this planet.
In Lion Force, the main characters are defending their world from invasion. It's an easy crusade to get behind, but Vehicle Voltron doesn't afford the same convenience. Throughout most of the series, I found myself rooting for the Drool Empire even as they acted like douchebags, because it's really hard to get behind the invader, even when it's Voltron. Another difficulty with this series is the lack of a consistent bad guy. Almost every episode has a new Drool commander taking over for the last one. The internal political intrigue and positioning of the Drool command staff makes for compelling storytelling, but only in those moments it's actually happening. The net result is a lot of faceless bad guys of the week. At the same time, Galaxy Garrison comes off looking particularly arrogant and corrupt. Commander Hawkins, played by Peter Cullen, is continually at odds with the Home Office because he knows the Earth forces need to leave Drool territory. And it's clear to anyone paying attention that the Voltron crew is just a chess piece for Earth's military, a helpless pawn following orders. Between Galaxy Garrison refusing to come to the aid of the Lion pilots in the original series, and their highly questionable actions in this series, I started to realize that in the Voltron universe, heroes are not created by other heroes on high. Heroes are created in spite of a lack of heroic leadership from above. If you like moral ambiguity, chess move politics, and a lot of gray in your drama, then Vehicle Voltron might appeal to you more than it did for most. It's certainly more complex and thought-provoking than Lion Force, but it's also a lot more bleak. Additionally, there are a few storytelling elements in the periphery that undercut the show in unfortunate ways. First, there are 15 Voltron pilots, 5 for the air team, 5 for the land team, and 5 for the sea team. The 3 team leaders are Jeff, Cliff, and Crick. This isn't a crew, this is a high school reunion. Over the course of the series, all 52 episodes, you rarely get a chance to see the other pilots develop. Most of the storyline centers around the team leaders and their working relationships with Commander Hawkins and Captain Newley. Every now and then, one of the pilots gets their own extended cameo in an episode, and the 3 female characters are seen with medium regularity, particularly Ginger, who apparently has a burgeoning relationship with Jeff, the leader of the Voltron force. But the sheer number of pilots handicaps the viewer's ability to feel for many of these people. And because they're constantly being forced to follow questionable orders, they often come across as weak and shackled, and they rarely take the initiative. Galaxy Garrison doesn't take any initiative either. You'd think a huge military operation would have backup personnel to pilot Voltron in case someone gets injured. You'd be wrong. If one of those 15 pilots gets hurt, no one can step up to take their place to help form Voltron. So they're extremely lucky that no one on the Voltron force ever dies. The show also makes a big deal about the need for supplies and supply bases for this expeditionary force. However, very early on, you start to realize the Earth fleet has no apparent shortage of ships at its disposal. The Drools destroy them in scores, and quite easily, yet the fleet never seems to be at a disadvantage. Similarly, the Drool fleet is a bottomless pit of ships, even toward the end of the series when Voltron is supposed to have them on the run. That makes it very difficult to create tension on this show. I really like Vehicle Voltron's overall look when he's combined. Aside from the roller skate feat, he looks like a powerful samurai. He's got a great variety of weapons, and a lot of the time he throws down on the Drools like a boss. Some of the individual vehicles are pretty cool too. The red jet and the feat vehicles, the choppers and the headship look pretty slick. However, the idea of piloting a giant fist is pretty weird. But what's weirder are the rules imposed on Vehicle Voltron by the writing team. One of the most inexplicable hobbling effects the show places upon itself is the idea that Voltron only has 5 minutes of energy once combined.
Voltron only has 5 minutes of stored solar energy. There's not much time left.
They never explain why, and they stress that Voltron is an exploration device, not a defensive weapon. He has weapons, but only to defend the exploration fleet. The 3 teams have a research purpose, not a military purpose. Let's assume they adhered to these rules. Voltron has a time limit, and he's a last resort defensive weapon. Kinda puts a damper on the fun of a giant robot. And it isn't really in keeping with Lion Voltron, which didn't have any of these limitations. But here's the best part. They didn't stick to these rules at all. Instead, they mention these limitations a few times and then conveniently forget about it. That's because Voltron is defeating every threat in every episode, and by the end of the series, he's the main spearhead weapon against the Drools. They use him to defend the Earth ships in the fleet, even though they are specifically designed for combat. Yet Voltron, the last resort, is the greatest weapon and their only hope. What I cannot figure out is why Galaxy Garrison can't make more of these robots for defense. Apparently, Voltron is an ancient secret, but it's difficult to sell Vehicle Voltron as an ancient legend when his feet look like Jeep Wagoneers. Additionally, where the Lions were formidable unto themselves when not combined, most of the Vehicle Voltron rides are flying bricks, just big floating rectangles. Also, the fact that all of them can fly and fly in space makes the whole air team idea a little redundant. What's the point of a dedicated air team if everyone can fly? The strength of this show lies with the villains. The Drools could have been the entire series without Voltron around, and there would have been enough material to keep things interesting. Coup d'etats, political backstabbing, rebellions, strife, class warfare, personal struggles, conflicting ideologies, a world that is dying and innocent people caught in the middle of a poorly timed power struggle while the planet crumbles into dust? What more does a show need? In truth, Vehicle Voltron isn't Voltron's story at all. It's the story of a society in decline and the internal struggles they suffer. Unlike Lion Force, where there's mutual conflict up until the last episode, and Voltron is the only thing that can stop the rampage of Zarkon. In Vehicle Voltron, we see very quickly that the Drools are destroying themselves. And so Voltron is just collateral damage. Unlike Beast King Golion, which redeems many of Lion Force Voltron's shortcomings, Armored Fleet Die Rugger 15 only improves the storytelling of Vehicle Voltron in nuances, and in other ways reinforces problems. For example, there's no 5-minute time limit on Die Rugger, which is nice, but he's still defined as an exploration system first and a weapon second. Rather than looking for new planets to inhabit, the Earth fleet is simply mapping the galaxy. Why this mapping project is so important as to be worth going to war with a previously unknown society and sacrificing the lives of millions of humans and alien allies is beyond me. Even though I think the imperialist motives of the Voltron version are a little sketchy, it makes more sense why they'd be so militant about fighting over territory with the Drools. Knowing Die Rugger is basically a cartography squad makes their destruction of the enemy hard to stomach. Die Rugger also has marked overtones about the importance of nature and how destruction of the environment can cause a complete demise of a civilization. The Drools, called the Galvestons in the original version, have destroyed their natural environment on their homeworld and desperately seek a new planet. Yet, aside from one voice of reason whom they ostracize, the Galvestons take a detour and make the destruction of the Earth fleet their only priority, while the world dies and their people starve. To the heroes' credit, they attempt truces and peace agreements multiple times, but predictably the Galvestons place more importance on their pride than the real issues. So a cycle starts where Die Rugger doesn't want to attack, but is forced to due to various external decisions. Tons of spaceships go head-to-head, lasers fly around, explosions, Die Rugger fights a death machine, and wins. I've heard Vehicle Voltron fans make the case that it's less repetitive than Lion Force. But after having watched Vehicle Voltron and Die Rugger, I'd argue that isn't completely the case. Yes, certain plot elements and certain characters are more layered, but the action patterns of Vehicle Voltron are just as repetitive as Lion Force, sometimes laughably so. Are the Drools going to use their brains this time? Nope, they're going to attack again. In both versions of the show, the villain's single-mindedness is stymieing to the point of frustration. I started to think it was too contrived, but remembering the follies of Nazi Germany in their final days, I gave Vehicle Voltron's villains a reluctant pass for their acute and epidemic decision-making disorder. While the style of animation between Golion and Die Rugger is similar, the two shows are very far removed from one another tonally. The pacing of Die Rugger is at first more ponderous, and that carries over into the Voltron adaptation. The best evidence of this is in the commercial transitions for the two shows. Both the bumpers for the Lion Force episodes are kinetic and powerful. The bumpers for the Vehicle Force are very static by comparison, with the flying bumper so boring when juxtaposed with the music, I can't believe another shot wasn't chosen. Lion Force set a tone and feel that was so overwhelmingly popular that Vehicle Voltron was at a disadvantage right out of the gate, because it wasn't the same kind of show, and the toys would suffer a similar fate. Sometimes more so. I don't like the way I did that. But the action element is... By the end of the series, he's the main... Damn it. In the series, he starts saving the Earth ships from the Drool Empire. and they are designed, and I am trying to remember my lines. Spock.